Welcome to my world history notes where I read from the book I wrote to teach homeschoolers world history. A Bible believer looks at world history. You can find it on lulu.com, amazon.com, at the Bible Baptist bookstore, or you can follow me here. Now we're in World War II. This is where my book will end. It will be World War II. And so let me just get to the point. I think I kind of okay, so here we are. Now we're in December of 1941. In complete surprise, at least to the soldiers and sailors of Pearl Harbor, the Japanese attacked on the morning of Sunday, December 7th, 1941. Very important day in our history and in world history. Um, so more than 3,000 Navy and Marine officers and men were killed and 876 were wounded. Army losses were 226 killed and 396 wounded. Three of the eight battleships present were sunk, including the USS Arizona. One was capsized and the remainder seriously damaged. Three light cruisers, three destroyers, and others ships were either sunk or seriously damaged. Historians agree that both U.S. Army Chief of Staff General Marshall and the U.S. Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Stark had enough information to realize that an attack on Pearl Harbor was imminent, and yet no word was given to the commanders on the scene. The greatest crime concerning this event was that, according to Admiral Kimmel, the Japanese had strict orders not to attack if the fleet at Pearl Harbor had been warned. The fact that neither the President, Admiral Stark, or General Marshall attempted to warn Admiral Kimmel is one of the greatest crimes in American and world history. The next day, through the 23rd of December, the Japanese took Wake Island and Guam from U.S. Marines, who fought heroically against great odds until overwhelmed. Japan then took Hong Kong from the British, as well as Malaya. Also in December, the Japanese began their invasion of the Philippines. General MacArthur's troops had to abandon the northern island of Luzon, but by year's end had retreated to the Bataan side of the unfordable Pampanga River. The Japanese juggernaut rolled on, and conquest after conquest mounted up with a British loss of Singapore, and by June of 1942, Burma. In January 1942, MacArthur and General Wainwright's troops repulsed attack after attack, and FDR ordered MacArthur to leave to assume command of all Allied forces in the South Pacific. He is reported to say, quote, "I shall return." Without resupply and low on rations, the Americans were pushed back, and the fort of Corregidor fell. The American generals surrendered, but groups of Americans and Filipinos continued to fight. The naval battle of the Coral Sea in May was the first great carrier battle, as no surface ships sighted the enemy. But planes launched from carriers carried the war to the opposition. Both sides made huge errors. Excuse me. But a Japanese invasion force for the Solomon Islands was stopped. The Battle of Midway was a victory for the U.S. in June of 1942. An outnumbered U.S. naval force cost Japan 4 carriers, one heavy cruiser, 275 planes, and 3,500 men killed. Midway was one of the most decisive battles of history. From that point on, Japan was on the defensive and had lost the initiative. Hitler was going to be bogged down in the frozen depths and vastness of Soviet Russia. Japan had been stopped in the vast Pacific, but it would take 3 more years of horrible fighting in history's bloodiest conflict to sort things out. When it was over, 60 million people would have died in this war that would shape the world we know today. Now, from the last few videos, you should know the name of the Austrian prime minister who was assassinated in 1934, nearly resulting in war between Germany, Yugoslavia, and Italy. Germany annexed what German-speaking country in 1938? What part of Czechoslovakia was home to 3 million Germans? What conference in 1938 was an attempt to appease Hitler's Germany and betray Czechoslovakia? What was the name of the aviator hero American who opposed America's involvement in the war in Europe? World War II officially began with the invasion of what country by Germany and the Soviet Union? And which naval victory for America over Japan is considered to be one of the most decisive battles of history? And from then, we're going to take up now the triumph of what was called the United Nations before there was the United Nations that we know now in New York. But it was called the United Nations back then, too. So we'll continue. Like I say, if you want my book, you can get it on lulu.com, amazon.com, at the Bible Baptist bookstore. It stops at the end of World War II, and then I will be taking up additional videos with research that I'm going to do more detailed on the Cold War. a lot of things we need to know about that, or just at least be aware of. And I hope you'll study and have your own conclusions. Thank you.